In this lesson, you're going to learn how to add validation to the files that are being uploaded to your server. So there are two main things we want to validate. One is the file size, and the second is the file type. So when it comes to the file size, I want to restrict it to some capacity. I don't want to allow for a 2 GB file to be uploaded for something simple like a profile picture. In that case, a 1 or 2 MB limit would be plenty. So we'll learn how to restrict that. We'll also learn how to restrict the uploads by their file type. So for this endpoint, I might want to require that only PDFs are uploaded. And for the avatar endpoint, I might want to require that an image is uploaded. We'll learn how to configure that as well. Now, everything we set up is going to be configured right here on this options object that we pass to Multer. Let's start by restricting the file size. On the Multer object, we have another property we can set up alongside of dest called limits. Now, limits itself is an object because there are multiple different limits we can set. But the most popular and the only one we're actually going to use in the course is file size. This allows us to set a limit for the max file size we want someone to be able to upload, and this is a number in bytes. So if I want to think in something like megabytes, I would think in millions. If I wanted to restrict the upload here to 1 MB, I would provide 1 million bytes as the value. So right here, that is a 1 with 6 zeros afterwards. Now, depending on the endpoint, I could change this. It could be 5 MB, 10 MB, or any other number, but it's generally a good idea to set some sort of max limit so users can't spam your server with huge files which are going to cost you to store. So right here we have our restriction in place. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure it works as expected. I'm going to save index.js and we're going to head over to Postman. Now here we have two requests. We have the one for uploading an avatar, and then we have the other, our little dummy request to the sample endpoint we're working on. This is the one that we're trying to mess around with. Now here, let's go ahead and click a Choose File button to pick a new file, and here we're going to work with two files. We have philly.jpg. This is under a megabyte in size and should be accepted, and we have fall.jpg. This is over a megabyte and should be rejected. Let's go ahead and start with Philly once again to make sure that's still working. I select it, I click send, and I get a 200 back, which is great. Next up, I'm going to click choose files and I'll pick fall. Now fall is too large and it should get rejected by the server, and down below that's exactly what's happening. I have a 500 status code, and down below that I have my response body. Now in this case we can see it's HTML, but we'll learn how to customize the Multer errors and we'll send back JSON a little bit later in the section. For now though, it is the error message itself that's important, and right here, file too large is indeed correct. So by adding the limits property and setting file size, we're able to restrict the size of the files we're accepting. Now let's go ahead and focus on restricting the file type. So in this case, we're going to say that this specific endpoint, it's expecting a Word document to be uploaded. Now over inside of the Finder, I provided you with two Word documents in that Node course images directory. We have the sample doc file and the sample docx file. Both of these are Word documents, and we're going to work on accepting both since they have different file extensions. We have docx for this one and doc for this one. Now to actually limit by the file extension, we're going to set up what's called a file filter. File filter is another property we're going to configure, and this is going to allow us to filter out the files that we don't want to actually have uploaded. So right here, we'll set that up. And the value for this is a function. It's a function that's going to run when a new file is attempted to be uploaded. And right here, I'll set that up using the ES6 method definition. Now, this is going to get called internally by Multer, and it's going to provide us with three arguments. We're going to have request, we're going to have file, and we're going to have callback, typically called CB. So this contains the request being made, this contains information about the file being uploaded, and we use this to tell Multer when we're done filtering the file. Now we can go ahead and actually start the process of filling this function out. Before we worry about figuring out what type of file is being uploaded, let's go ahead and talk about how we want to call callback. So if something goes wrong and we want to throw an error, we simply pass that error to the callback function. So right here, we call callback with a new error, and we provide a message that makes sense. We could say something like file must be a PDF if that's exactly what we were looking for. Otherwise, we could say something else like please upload an image. This is how we can send back an error to the person who uploaded the file. Now, if things go well, we're not going to provide the first argument to callback, though we're still going to call it. We actually provide undefined as the first argument, saying that nothing went wrong. Then we provide a Boolean as the second argument. We provide the value of true if the upload should be expected. The final way we can call callback is a way we're not going to use. We provide no error and false. This is going to silently reject the upload. We want to either accept it or actually send an error back. So those are the two approaches that we'll be taking. Now we can go ahead and comment this code out for the moment, leaving it in place, and we'll focus on actually filling out the function. What we need to do is figure out how to get the name of the file that was uploaded, because we want to look at the file extension and see if it matches up with what we're looking for. Now, all of that information, the information about the file name, it's contained on the file object right here. And at this point, I want to take a quick moment to head over to the documentation and show you where you can learn more about all of this. So I'll head over to the browser once again, and right here, we are at the Multer page on npmjs.com. If we scroll down, the first major section in the documentation is usage, and this is sort of generic examples that cover things we've already looked at. What we're going to do is scroll past that to the API section, which defines everything that Multer supports. Now, the first section is called File Information, and this shows us all of the properties available on that file object we have access to right here. Now, the one we're interested in is original name. Original name is going to allow us to get the name of that file, whether it's philly.jpg, fall.jpg, or something else, and we'll be able to use it with a little conditional logic to figure out if it's a file we want to accept or reject. So over here inside of our function, let's start by just accepting PDF files. If the extension is not a PDF, that's a problem. We're going to send back an error. Otherwise, we'll accept the upload. Let's get started with an if statement that looks at that file extension. So if right here, we are looking at file.originalName, notice that name is not capital N. We are not using camel case here for whatever reason. It is all in lowercase. And the property here we're looking for is going to be on the string ends with. Ends with is going to return true if the original name ends with the string we provide and false otherwise. In this case, let's see if it ends with .pdf. Next up, we'll set up the code block to run when the condition is true. Now in this case, this code runs when it is a PDF. We want the opposite effect, so I will use the logical not operator. Now this code is only going to run when it's not a PDF, and in that case, we are going to use return to stop the function execution. I'm going to call callback, and I will provide an error as that first argument. A new error with the following message right here, please upload a PDF. Perfect. Next up, if things are going well and it was a PDF file, we will accept it by using CB with undefined, right here providing true. Now let's go ahead and test our work, making sure this restriction is working as expected. What I'm going to do is head over to Postman and upload a couple of different files. Now, if I try to upload the image, which is currently set up right there, it's going to fail, but it might fail because the file is too large, so let's switch that up. I'll start by trying to upload one of the Word documents. Either one will work. I'll send that off to the server, and what do I get? I can see my message. Please upload a PDF, which is fantastic. Next up, let's use choose files again, and this time we're going to upload a PDF. This one should work, and if I send that off, we get a 200, and the file was accepted, and it's now stored inside of the images directory. So using file filter is going to allow us to filter the files by their file type. In this case, we have an endpoint which is only accepting PDFs that are under 1 megabyte in size. Now, what if we wanted to try to find a file with multiple extensions? If I want to support Word documents, it might end in .doc or .docx. All we have to do for that is switch up our if statement, checking for one or the other. Now, you could use the or operator and add another ends with call, or you could use a regular expression to get that done, and that's what we'll do. If you've never worked with regular expressions before, they can be really hard to get started with. I always recommend starting with regular expressions by using the following site. In the browser, we're going to go over to regex101.com. This is one of many different sites that allow you to create regular expressions using their GUI interface that you can then take into your JavaScript code, and it's a great way to get started if you haven't used regular expressions before. Right here, we're going to start with our test string. Now, in this case, that would be the file name. So I can use something like my.doc.doc. Now, this is something I do want to support. I want to support .doc or .docx. Now we provide the regular expression up above and see if this would be considered a match or not. And to start, we're going to look for the dot. I want to make sure that I have the dot for the file extension. And to do that, we use a backslash with the dot following it. The backslash escapes the dot. The dot usually has a special meaning in regular expressions. When we use the backslash, that means we're looking for this character literally in the string. We're trying to find that match. From there, we can list out the file extension, and we're going to go ahead and list out doc. We can see that's considered a match as well, and we'll wrap things up with the $sign. The $sign means that this comes at the end. So I don't want this somewhere else in the file. I want the string to end with it. So right here, if I add other characters, we'll see it's no longer considered a match. Well, .doc does exist. It's not at the end. So right here, we're just enforcing that it does indeed come at the end, which is what we want. Now in our case, as I mentioned, we want doc or docx. We can alter our regular expression a little bit to get that done. Right here, we are going to remove doc and open and close a set of parentheses. Then we're going to list out our regular expressions, doc, separated by the vertical bar. So doc, vertical bar, docx. This tells the regular expression to match doc or docx. So down below, we can see what we have is considered a match, and so it is when docx is the extension. Now, if I were to switch that up and add more characters, once again, we do not have a match in place. Now, I'm not going to take a deep dive into regular expressions. There are entire courses, books, and sites that are dedicated to them, but I did want to give you a small introduction if you've never used them before, so you can understand what's actually happening. We're going to go ahead and use this inside of our program to check the file extension. So right here, let's go ahead and swap out the if condition with something brand new. In this case, we still want to look at the original file name. So we'll start with file.originalName once again. And now we're going to use match. Match allows us to provide a regular expression inside of forward slashes. And this is going to be the exact regular expression we just typed over in the browser. That is backslash dot in parentheses followed by the $sign. We're going to have doc with the vertical bar docx. Now we have a filter that's going to throw errors when we see those. We'll reverse that by using the logical not operator. Down below, we can update our message to please upload a Word document. Excellent. Now with this in place, we can go ahead and test our work to make sure this is functioning as expected. Over inside of Postman, I'm going to try to send off the PDF, which should now fail, and it does. It says, please upload a Word document, and I will pick one of the two Word documents. Either one will work. I'll pick the docx one, I upload it, and it works as expected. If I switch over to the .doc one, the other Word document, and send that off, that should upload as well. So now we have a way to restrict by file size and by the type of the file being uploaded. In the next video, it's going to be up to you to add similar validation for the route in the user router, so let's go ahead and jump into that one.